Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 40 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnos, joined by Tettles and Trell, as always. Who have I correctly unmuted them? Hello?
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Pog.
And Dratnos with 40 full episodes of cringy intros.
Dude, Tettles looked like he was talking, but he was not. And so I thought I didn't have him unmuted. So I had to, I panicked, went to check if I had him unmuted. And this week we are joined by Jason XD Roffle, the GM of poptart corndoG. Welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Welcome to our show.
Why are people spamming your Twitch chat with an egg?
That's that's Jason XD Roffle there. That's
I had a full head of hair just today, and I became an egg for this.
It's beautiful. So
It's true.
Today we are going to talk about Battle for Azeroth. We're going to talk about the good and the bad things, which Jason on the show has perhaps many contributions on one or both sides of that. It's going to be a roundup of the entirety of BFA, the features, all the expansion systems, Mythic Plus, rating. We're going to kind of leave PvP, of course, because that's not really the focus of our show, but everything that we mostly focus on, we're going to talk about what was good and what was bad, especially like the changes from Legion as well. So that's our main topic this week. But first off, we have a congratulations to give out to Tettles here. Tettles, congratulations on defeating Mythic N'Zoth. Big congrats to Mike, the guild on US Zul'jin.
Congratulations to Mike.
Congrats, Tettle.
I'm really proud of Magita. They did a great job.
Yeah. Impressive work by an impressive guild. All right, so again, this week we've moved our show from normal time because of Keystone Masters this weekend. So the normal time when we would be recording this show, you should instead tune in to twitch.tv/Keystone Masters, where you can watch myself and Trell playing and Tettles casting in that tournament. So that's going to be a fun time. Trell, has practice been going for you for Keystone Masters?
It's going really well, aside from the 2 days where we can't practice this week, yesterday and today. But everything else...
Yeah, those are the same 2 days that we couldn't really practice too much either.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's a fun tournament. Yeah, what do you think about the level of keys? So for reference, time trials were 16s, and the tournament is going to be 17s for Keystone Masters.
It's really awkward this season. Like, everything dies significantly faster than last MDI, but it does relatively the same amount of damage to the group at this level. And so I think MDI is going to go at least 18s. And once it starts getting to 18s and 19s, people are going to get one shot by tyrannical mechanics here and there, and maybe some trash mechanic combos.
Yeah, the sick part as well is that corruption is increasing our damage and reducing our survivability at the same time. So
yeah.
It's an even further effect towards just dying.
The corruption's insane. I'll be doing a boss, and the trash is dead, and there's only the boss fighting us. And it's usually just only tank damage or minor group damage. Then I just look at the party frames, and all their health bars are because of the corruption.
Do you think that the
constant
dungeons should either go up in level or go further down? I feel like they should either go further up to where you have to actually pull slower, or they should go further down to where you aren't going to just perish to random things.
I think they should be at 18 and just stay there. Either 18 or 19. 19 might be a little difficult on some bosses, kind of unfortunate. Whatever it is, I hope they just pick one and keep it for the whole tournament, not just randomly bump it up, because that's super annoying for every team out there.
If I was in charge, I would scale the health but not the damage of the dungeons by 40% upwards. I'd just make it health of a 20,
Yes.
damage of a 16, and then I think that would give us a really good mix, or really good mid ground.
Yeah, I agree.
I would agree with that.
But I think that's obviously fairly hard for them to do compared to just picking a keystone level. So, anyways, we do have Tettles. You have a little pet project in the works in our Titanforge Discord as well that we should let everybody know about, right?
Oh, shit. Okay, so yeah, and in our Discord, and we will link this down in the description of the YouTube video, I created a census just trying to get a little bit of feedback on the show, how people are feeling about it. I'll link it in Twitch chat right now. So basically some of the things we're looking for are how you found the show, what kind of shows you end up liking, just relative skill range, just so we can and then like we're getting some feedback in terms of other things, just so we can better make the show and better make topics moving forward into the future. What are you laughing about, Dradness?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, so that's gonna be the place to go. Let us know your thoughts. All right, let's thank our patrons real quick and then get underway. So our patrons are Ahar of US Proudmore, Paul of US Proudmore, King of Skills, VTech XD, Zuko, Jaw, Uncle Please Invite, Khalifa D Pog, Drunk Swede of from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Dawn EU, Shirtless Tettles, Tootsie, Heltari, Ishiyu, Blue of Emerald Dream, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Never Nude, Grizzjam, Chewy, and Trell Rounded Tank. Thank you so much for the support, for letting us create this podcast, and especially helping us create the podcast. Even when we've got stuff on weekends, we can find a way to make it happen in the middle of the week or whatever. Okay, so yeah. Main topic this week, expansion and review, the good and the bad. Obviously, there's been a lot of complaining about BFA, so that'll be a main thing. But before we even get started with that, let's move on to our tip of the week segment. And Jason, why don't you take your first tip of the week here?
Sure. So something I found out this week is if you have Warlock alts in your raid, you can't just say Warlock, 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 Warlock and expect them to summon people. You have to actually say their name, because otherwise they don't know you're talking to them.
That's true in every guild, I think, actually.
Yeah.
Like Summoning Stone, Raid Warning, Summoning Stone. Then you finally like say directly, X person summon, please.
Warlock alts are the worst as well. Like you have to teach them about like pet micro and soul stoning healers and putting down summoning stones. There's just so many jobs for warlocks to do. They like can never go AFK. So yeah, when you have warlock alts, they need to be treated like a new puppy that needs to be housebroken. So with care and respect, but firmness as needed. All right, my tip of the week is that as we're approaching Shadowlands, hero classes are gonna be, I think they're gonna be starting at level 1, even demon hunters in Shadowlands. So if you want to level up some characters between now and Shadowlands, do the hero classes now and do the other ones later, because relative to the other ones, the hero classes are going to be easier now than they are in Shadowlands. It might still be less total time. It might still be less total time to level up a DH in Shadowlands than it does starting now, but relative to the other classes, hero classes are still better to level. Only right now, though.
Do you think that they're going to have, like, if you just start a character but don't level it, so it's 98, if, like, you're just going to be in the starting zone at, like, level 30, and then the new Demon Hunter is going to be level 1 in the same zone?
Maybe. I'm sure that they will have somebody, put some time into figuring out exactly how to handle that interaction. Actually, they probably will. Like, that's something that will get some attention, I'm sure. Okay, Trell, what is your tip of the week?
My tip is this patch, the trinket Merectha's Fang from Temple of Seth Rallis is very, even on agility classes sometimes, such as Havoc Demon Hunter. So Havoc Demon Hunters have a lot of burst with their Focusing Iris, but when Focusing Iris is down, a lot of them will cast the Merectha's Fang trinket. And because of their enormous amounts of haste after I-Beam and with the Furious Gaze trait, it does a lot of damage. It scales with haste. This is the same thing with a lot of tanks. You can buff the trinket with the Strength of the Warden Major Essence, and it does a crap load of damage on demand.
Cool.
You just can't block while you cast it, so be careful.
Very cool. I've used that trinket before, only on strength users though, yeah, but doing it on a DH sounds fun too. DH
it does like 8 to 9% of their damage. It's so silly.
That is insane. All right, Tettles, we have a clip of the week from you. Let's go take a look at this. This is from Trell's stream as they were doing Keystone Masters practice.
Wait, I thought this was yours.
Nope. That was last week's.
Oh.
Did you guys kill me?
Trell, how exactly is Dad dead?
And I died.
Well, you see, I have a really great damage as a tank this patch in the form of complete RNG, Twilight Devastation. And so since Dad was closest to me when he was mind controlled, Twilight Devastation literally one-shot him and wiped us on the boss.
My favorite part of this clip is when he finds out what happened to him and he's just, here, let's listen into it.
And I died.
Okay,
What?
I put it in the right spot. Here we go.
You Twilight Dev me and I die.
You Twilight Dev me and I died.
I was pretty upset.
Yeah. That's a great clip.
At least there's a little counterplay now. Now that I know it can happen, I kind of like aim my character a little bit away from him if he's mind controlled, just in case. But still, like, there's a good chance I might kill him.
That's insane. Yeah. There's a couple of weird things on that fight, especially on these like lowish keys. That first mind control is actually just such a big RNG point in Heartsbane Triad fight. Like, if it just goes on your Unholy Death Knight, it's so bad compared to going on anybody else.
It is. It's really bad.
All right. So let's get started with our main topic this week, which is the expansion in review. So we're going to go kind of item by item of things that happened this expansion, and then we'll talk about the pros and the cons. I imagine that I'm kind of mostly going to end up playing the pros side here, because it looks like you guys are all pretty chomping at the bit to do the cons.
Having made this document, I think I was also going to end up playing the pros side a lot, because we have Jason and Trell here.
Jason and Trell are gonna be our mostly in the cons, but of course we'll keep a balanced perspective. We'll give our real opinions, not just pretend to like stuff that we didn't actually like. So let's get started with Battle for Azeroth's flagship segment. This is the first thing that showed up, at BlizzCon on the slide for Battle for Azeroth. The most exciting feature of the expansion, Island Expeditions. This has been, just a huge thing that they put times into in put dev time into in Battle for Azeroth, and I think that it's fair to say that it was not something that turned out all that well. I don't know. I
did 3 total islands this entire patch, and I'll never do any more again.
Well,
that's a better experience than people who did more islands.
Okay. So, as a point of reference, I lumped Island Expeditions and Warfronts together in our show notes, and for every other part of the game, there's a pros and a cons. There are no pros for Island Expeditions and Warfronts. It starts off and it says mostly a miss, and I think that's the best description of it.
That is the kindest description I've ever seen for them.
Okay, in the nicest terms possible, I think it was a good attempt, and I want them to try new things. I don't think my point is for them to not try new things, but I think that these were bad. Like, why exactly were they bad? Jason, do you want to talk about like what exactly made Islands and Warfronts terrible for everybody?
Well, I think the biggest thing is like the reward structure. Like, there's like several branches of like character progression. You have gear and artifact power, the main ones, and the fact that by far the most lucrative form of farming artifact power is islands was insane to me. The whole expansion, like, you were grinding islands for patch after patch after patch after patch, and it's not like they were new and interesting every time like they were promised to be. They were a handful of mobs on an island, and you ran around, you got 10,000 of them, and if you had one of those stupid birds that disoriented your tank, you probably died. Or if you got the guys that fear on the one island, the dogs,
the Wendigos, yes.
The Howlers.
The Howlers.
Oh my god.
Yes. It was crazy because some of the islands would just be like totally free, right? Like the newer ones, with the rabbits in them.
Oh yeah, and Snow Blossom Village. Snow Blossom Village is this, yeah.
It's best because the layout is beautiful, right? It's just a square, so you run around in the square, and all the mobs are easy, so you just kill them. But most of the islands were just it's like this convoluted terrain that you just have to run around, and sometimes the mobs just get stuck halfway up a hill and are like, nah, fuck, I'm going back. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, their design, I kind of get what they were going for, like infinitely, you can do this over and over, and it'll be a little bit different every time, like sort of a Greater Rift style thing in Diablo. And I think that would have been okay if like we weren't forced in there over and over and over for weeks and weeks on end, this whole expansion.
Yeah, it seems like there were ways they could have changed it, but I think that the islands were a really like awful mix of not being difficult but being annoying, because there was like, you were really time pressured in them. You were just trying to go, blast. You couldn't actually there was nothing interesting to actually do in any island. Like, doing a quest or whatever didn't change anything. It was just the fastest way you could speed through an island as possible. I feel like it would be a lot better if it was like pure single player content like Horrific Visions, and you could maybe make them more relaxing Horrific Visions that don't have like a time limit, but you actually go and explore the islands and find different things that actually give different rewards each time. And I think they landed on like a worst of all worlds spot for islands to be in.
Yeah, I think Islands and Warfronts are just a bad version of Horrific Visions. Just generally, for like the content niche that they fill, I think they're all in the same one: Island Expeditions, Warfronts, and Horrific Visions. But Horrific Visions are done well, and Islands and Warfronts are done poorly. And I don't even. It's like really hard to explain why. I think it's because Horrific Visions are challenging and like scalable. Plus, you can do them like solo, whereas Island Expeditions and Warfronts are very easy.
Yeah,
always.
I love her. I think Horrific Visions are an excellent move in the right direction. I think that BFA, if the like amount of art team work that went into Island Expeditions and Warfronts went into Horrific Visions, if they made like as many different Horrific Vision maps as there are island maps, and as many different varied mob types and stuff, all that work went into Horrific Visions, that would be a really nice place to be. And I think there's good hopes about like Torghast carrying on those improvements into Shadowlands. So that's a nice thing. Definitely, it does not start off an expansion well when like a huge amount of dev time and their innovation on the island AI and the Warfront systems, all of that went into like useless, not any fun content.
That's my gripe about it. All that time could have been spent on the raids and dungeons, and it went into Islands and Warfronts of all.
My one hope is that like the AI from Islands might be applied in like an interesting way in the future. I mean, their one attempt so far is Comp Stomp, which is free PvP week. So
we love Comp Stomp.
It's a good week.
By the way, Comp Stomp is coming up. Gamers, get ready. Take your time off work. Comp Stomp is coming up on the week beginning on March 31st in North America and April 1st in EU.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Comp Stomp,
Don't take off work for Comp Stomp. Maybe take it off for the coronavirus.
I have 7 Blood of the Enemies on my account, and I will have 12 after that week. All 12, all classes, all Blood of the Enemies. No big deal, no big deal. So if anybody would like to join the Comp Stomp train, that will be choo-chooing that week. So get ready.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the next system here, World Quests. So World Quests were an evolution from the Legion system, and I think they were pretty similar to how Legion World Quests ended up. I don't know, not really. I don't have a huge problem with them like I did with Island Expeditions and Warfronts, because it just seems like kind of a normal daily system. I believe that, okay, so we saw 8.0 and 8.1 World Quests. 8.2 was a different type of quest where we also had the ally quest system and daily quests in Nazjatar. And then there was Mechagon as well, which is like 1 world quest per day, and then a bunch of small daily quests that were much less efficient than that one big daily quest. Then in 8.3, we saw a completely different system where there's like these pseudo world quests that don't actually show up on the map. There's daily quests, and there's these like rares and treasure chest things, all kind of existing in the same zones. For me, 8.2 was the best of those. I liked the way 8.2, like I liked the Ally Quest, World Quest, and Nazjatar system. I did not. I actually think that 8.3 was a huge step back from all previous World Quests in both Legion and BFA.
I'm generally, for me, I think I'm in the same vein of how you're feeling about 8.2 versus 8.3 in terms of World Quests. But generally for me, World Quests are okay the first few weeks of the expansion whenever you're doing them in groups, potentially getting gear upgrades from the World Quests. They're new, they're kind of fun. But then whenever you're doing them 8 months, 12 months, a year and a half into the expansion, and like just because they're one of the better sources for AP per hour farmed, and you get reputation so you can get Paragon caches, then it's like, all right, maybe we should retire the World Quest and not force players to do it a year and a half in. I don't mind them. They're actually fun for the first little bit of the expansion, and they should be done. And like, I like how the flying is gated behind reputation somewhat too. I don't have any problems with that, but I do hate the fact that I have to fucking farm them for AP.
I definitely agree. Like, player progression from World Quest, I think, works to an extent, but like it should be a content that you outmode eventually, and you just almost never do. It keeps coming back every tier, but it's not like, you know, I can get a gear. Well, okay, corruption will come up in a bit, but for most of the expansion,
that is related. That's true.
A source of AP. But
I don't know, like doing a full clear of your AP on the world map, it's actually kind of, a kind of fun thing to do when you're, you just want to turn your mind off and put a bunch of quests on the map and then go do them all and get some AP. I think that's okay. I think it's okay for the game to have that.
Okay,
I feel like
I
you
think that
should
there
be able to-
should be something in the game like that. I just don't think you should have to do it 5
Yeah,
months into the
I think it
expansion.
should not be required. And I think that it's maybe been a little bit too much incentivized, this expansion, to actually, need to do that. But I think that the ability to, like, log onto WoW, turn on Netflix or whatever, not have to do any difficult content and, like, just grind some mindless stuff that actually does something, at least a little bit useful for you. I think the game is better when it has that kind of stuff rather than just logging on and you have nothing to do.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd rather just have cosmetic stuff. Like, if
Yeah,
you
that'd be
wanted to
cool.
farm it, you could. But if the player power is too much from World.
I'd be fine with that, definitely.
Well, that's why like Essence is being gated behind like reputation somewhat too. Like rank 4 Essence, like not necessarily even player power. Like so, the early ranks of Essences are gated behind like a very small amount of, hopefully a very small amount of reputation farming generally, and then the higher ranks of the Essences were gated behind Paragon boxes, which I don't know, they weren't that bad.
Yeah, I had no problems with any rank 4 essences, but we will get to essences later.
They are tied in the world quest somewhat. Yeah.
One other thing that we ran into was lag, actually, this expansion, especially in 8.2 and 8.3. So 8.2 Battle for Nazjatar, like sharding was just a huge lag fiesta on almost all shards that had a Battle for Nazjatar. Maybe not all, but all the shards I was in that had Battle for Nazjatar. Whenever it popped in my realm, it would just immediately everybody would shard in and it would be awful. And then Veil is just so bad this patch.
I think it depends on realms and sharding. I know some realms like Titanforge and Illidan are really bad. I know Kazakh on EU is actually just unplayable at peak times too. I think it comes down to like realms and sharding. So I think they might want to just relook at how the sharding ends up working out come next expansion, because like you were saying, like lag is the very bare minimum. If the game is laggy, then the game is just the most unfun thing imaginable. So lag, like getting the servers fixed, is just like priority number 1, I would even say.
Yeah, even like 2 months into the patch, 20 minutes before our show today, I went to Veil and it was laggy. It's just like, this is not fun.
That's one of the problems with being on, a premier WoW server like Tichondrius or Illidan, just
Premier.
One of the places where the top talent kind of all coalesces into those 2-ish servers.
Blizzard had to hold it back at the beginning of the expansion by keeping Tyke from launching whenever.
Yeah,
we're gonna get onto that too.
That's right. I forgot about that.
All right, but first, let us move on to talking about new dungeons. So this time in BFA, we got a total of 10 dungeons on release, and then we got Operation Mechagon in patch 8.2, and we got it in Mythic Plus in patch 8.3. That's the entirety of the dungeon offerings. So first of all, we didn't see as many new dungeons over the expansion as we saw in Legion, right? Legion, we had Cathedral, Seat, and Karazhan, whereas in BFA, we just got Mechagon only. So a little bit less in the kind of patch-based dungeon release cycle than in previous expansions. But let's talk about the dungeons themselves. What did you guys think about just the new dungeons in general? Jason, what were your kind of, coming from Legion, how did you like the BFA dungeons?
It felt a lot like some of the dungeons were super linear. Like, you couldn't really change your routing at all, especially with Infested, which was like, at the beginning of the expansion, it was like you got to avoid those mobs all the time just because they have a circle over their head that's all corrupted and shit. So it was frustrating coming from Legion, which felt a lot more open, at least like because there were multiple paths usually. Sometimes not, like Darkheart Thicket was a pretty linear dungeon, but most dungeons you had the option to skip a lot of it. And choose what you wanted to do and how much you wanted to do at the same time. But it too often felt like it's like you are basically restricted to 1 to 2 pulls at a time, and chances are those pulls are not going to be that fun because you can't like the kiting thing in Legion got out of hand, but they really went aggressive on fixing that by destroying threat generation and making it so that if you run away from the mobs, they just start killing your friends for no reason.
What about the 3 melee kicks per pack? What about
Yeah.
And then Legion. So the other thing is, I think coming from if Legion had 2 changes, we would not be thinking this expansion was alien in that way. If the Blood Elf racial Arcane Torrent wasn't a silence, and you couldn't do the kiting strat, we wouldn't be like, oh man, look at all these changes from like it would be the same thing, I think, right?
True, yeah.
I feel, but
The
because
anti-kite mechanics are awful.
Yeah.
Even gathering pulls, people just die. Like we're learning these MDI pulls and the new Mechagon, and like if I'm out of the pack for more than 1 second, someone's just dead. They get skull cracked or head butted or whatever the thing the mechanic does.
Fervent Strike is always you're gathering a pack and literally 1 second after that stupid thing's in combat with you, it just Fervent Strikes your friend out of existence. Yeah, I think that the anti-kite mechanics should be, I don't know, they should be changed to be maybe not so much damage, maybe just make it so that like if it hits a non-tank spec player, it gives them like a haste debuff or whatever. It doesn't really like, murder them. And that way it could stop them from it could stop you from having this impossible or one-shotty thing at random times.
There was a good example. They did do one thing right, like one anti-kite mechanic right. The crabs and Toldagor,
yeah, that's a good
have
one.
Anti-kite mechanics. They squeeze the nearest target, but it has counterplay because there's like an amount of time that you can react to the cast before you get killed, and it's like it doesn't take on the first squeeze tick. You have time to vanish or parry it or whatever you want to do, stun it, fear, and cap it. There's so many options. If everything was like that, I think it'd be a lot better.
Yeah, there was a lot of class restrictions based on just like, okay, you required classes that have melee kicks, a lot of ways to interact with a bunch of different abilities, and Shroud. And it turns out Rogue was the class that did all that stuff. So you would just have to have like 2 rogues for much of BFA, for maybe not 2 rogues, but 1 or 2 rogues for most dungeons. Turns out Awakened did a good job of fixing that, but until then, it was really rough to play without a rogue in keys.
Something that I realized after the last show is that people don't want to be de-incentivized by not bringing the best comp. They want to be like incentivized for bringing like their class and what their class has to bring in. No class should not be able to like complete a dungeon because their character can't dispel poisons. You don't have an immunity or you don't have a rogue or for Shroud or something like that. There should be no class or composition that 100% cannot complete this dungeon. I think in my personal opinion, of course, like that's subject to change. Like, of course, there will be some level of cutting edge where you do need the best meta comp, but like the variability between a top level comp and just something that's terrible right now is unheard of.
I think, yeah, what they did to the Fear guy in Awakened is a really good example of like, okay, the Fear guy has Mass Dispel counterplay, it has Imp Dispel counterplay, it has Tremor Totem counterplay, there's all kinds of Fear immunities that are counterplay, or you can just go in there with any comp that with none of those abilities, and it works still. Like, it's better with Dispels and stuff, but it still works to pull the Fear guy without any of those kind of immunity effects, or, Dispel effects. Whereas stuff like there's just random poison abilities like we were talking about at the end of Siege where you don't have a poison dispel and that's just like 20 times harder than if you do.
I feel like the different types of debuffs was designed for like such an old era of the game where you had huge groups doing all the relevant content. It's like, 40-man raid. It's like, okay, yeah, we could have a bunch of different types of debuffs. That's fine. You have a ton of people in the raid that can supposedly cover that. And then you keep shrinking the groups. Even the 20-man, it's like, theoretically, that's fine. But, I mean, name a debuff in a raid today that isn't just magic. And all healers do that.
Ancient Curse, Mott.
Ancient Curse, but you can walk into a circle.
There's a puddle for that.
The debuff that was on that boss in Battle of Dazar'alor. Oh god, the Raptor boss, the Loa tribe one.
There's a curse on that one.
That's true.
That bounced around. Yep.
Okay, so that was you got 2 bosses there, and I think the mod doesn't really count because everyone can just dispel it by walking into a circle. But So if all of the like relevant dispels in raid are magic, I don't really understand what the point is to limiting that in Mythic Plus at this point. Like if a healer should basically be able to take care of any debuff, and then you can have like you can still have the different types of debuffs. Like a monk tank can do poison and disease. Like that's a utility that they could have, and that's still a good thing. But that a monk healer can't do curses or something just because like arbitrarily that's in a dungeon. For some reason, it's like, okay, you have to have a mage or a druid for that dungeon, I guess. It doesn't really make sense. It's very limiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can still make some healers better than others at certain types of dispels. Like you could make it so that, if you dispel a disease, it refunds mana, but you can do curses and it doesn't refund mana or whatever. Or like you get a buff when you dispel diseases and you don't from the other ones if you want to make the healers themed in a certain way. But they should be able to hit everything, I think, all those dispels.
Same thing with enrage mechanics. Like some enrage mechanics have no counterplay, like the what are they called? Guardians and King's Rest in the first boss. They just enrage and they never come off the enrage. Like there should be a timer at least if the group doesn't have a soothe mechanic. Maybe just make the buff last 10 seconds instead of infinitely in stacks.
Enrage is so dog shit.
Yeah, the first room of King's Rest actually they when they have like 2 stacks and they're just running at your tank, which in Keystone Masters that was you didn't play an enrage spell in that dungeon, so you're just sitting there. And to be fair, that's that's totally fine. But in Live Keys, in Live Keys so often this expansion there was this experience of like, do we have a Rester Druid in our group? If yes, cool. If no, we have to deal with this awful mechanic. And there was just so many different cases where it's like, okay, battle res, stealth, entangling roots, soothe. All of those things would cause you to have that experience. Typhoon even. Yeah.
Let alone there's an entire affix with raging mobs.
Right.
Only
exactly.
one healer can do.
Yeah. So that was not good. Let's transition to actually talking about those seasonal affixes though.
I want to talk about the pros just a little bit, just so we can just so we don't move forward without talking about some of the things that were good. Less one shots in the expansion. I think we'd all agree that there are significantly less one shots. That's obviously a big pro. More engaging trash. It was a little bit too much sometimes. I think we talked about that, but it was at least more engaging for a longer period of time. Required a little bit more skill and more finesse occasionally, but by and large, it just came down to probably too many kicks. But it was more engaging. Aggressive tuning passes and constant dungeon tuning even late into the expansion. With Legion, they just shipped the dungeons and just did not touch them. So the fact that they were constantly...
Do you remember Halls of Valor for the first year of Legion? Just they came back in like a year later and they just took out half the trash.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're constantly tuning the dungeons is really nice. I don't expect them to get the dungeons like 100% correct on launch, but the fact that they will continue to just make sure that everything looks okay is good. 2 new dungeons added mid-expansion. I actually think that 14 from Legion is a bit too many. In my personal opinion, I don't know if you guys feel differently. I think 12. I think 10 to 12 is actually an okay number. I mean, if you like 14, you like 14, right?
Maybe they just started with... wait, I thought they started with 8 and they ended at 12.
10, it's 10... Oh, in Legion? Legion I thought was 10 at the start.
I think it was 8 and then they...
Oh, yeah, it was 8.
Oh, maybe it was 8 to 12 then.
I think it was 13 final Mythic Plus dungeons.
They had 13 total dungeons because of Violet Hold, but 12 Mythic Plus dungeons.
Yeah, because there was 2 per zone, right? There was two for each of the 4 zones, and
I really liked that.
Violet Hold. Yeah,
it seemed like each dungeon was a little bit more well made, in my opinion. It wasn't just like buggy and evade spots because 10 dungeons in BFA just seems like they were unfair.
Dude, I don't know if you remember. Every dungeon was evade spot central. Every single dungeon was dog shit with evades. I don't know about that.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. I didn't play it at a very high level at first.
I don't think every dungeon was that bad, but there were some very bad dungeons. Dark Heart Thicket is in particular even worse.
Yes, every single time your tank evades for 1 second, and then all 4 of your other players are just dead instantly. You're like, oh, okay, that worked out.
That even came into play in the MDI because there were all these snap spots in Dark Heart Thicket, and they ended up getting a bad snap, and then it evaded and then killed their whole group. I think that was Shell's Angels or something. But that dungeon was not well made. It was.
I think the dungeons are better.
Those lashers going into the tree boss, they completely reworked their snap logic after one of those things, and then they just became like awful again in a different way where they would like reset randomly for no good reason.
I do not think the dungeons are necessarily better, but I do think they're better made in terms of these mobs will not evade and instantly kill my whole entire group, whereas in Legion that happened a lot.
Yeah.
What would you like less, Toldagor or Darkheart Thicket dungeon?
Darkheart Thicket. But I think I as a dungeon, I like Darkheart Thicket less than Toldagor. I hated getting one shot by Draceron. I hated getting one shot by Oakheart. I hated getting one shot by Shade of Xavius, and I hated that the cats would also instantly kill you, and everything was liable to evade reset at any given moment. I was not a fan of any of that.
Can we just remove them both?
Yeah,
Shit. Those are both pretty not sick dungeons.
Toldagor is, I think, it's just so bad, man.
Toldagor is a paper mache dungeon.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't include that in the main dungeons list.
Yeah, Toldagor, the Toldagor rant will be 1 hour long, Patreon only exclusive. So subscribe there.
I should have gone the Violet Hold way for sure.
Yeah, that one should.
That's a good idea.
Just no Mythic Plus in there. That would be great. Would love that.
Equally as small on the x-axis as Violet Hold makes it.
Oh yeah. Just make the pack spawn right on you, and they only come and fight you. You don't have to actually go up the dungeon where you can knock things through the floor. Okay. So one of the big changes that came this expansion, instead of giving like a lot of the kind of dev time for dungeon changes went into seasonal affixes and making those happen, I'd say, rather than adding new dungeons and stuff. And I think that so we got 4 different seasonal affixes. We started with Infested, then we moved on to Reaping, then we got Beguiling, and then we got Awakened. And Awakened is what we're gonna presumably end the expansion with. I think we're probably not gonna have another another seasonal affix coming in.
Something I don't us like
I don't know.
The expansion, right?
There's I guess there's no 8.3.5. So I guess this is definitely going to be the last seasonal affix that we have, unless they give us a preview of Shadowlands seasonal affix, right at the end. That'd be cool.
That'd be pretty cool.
I'd take that.
Yeah, like in the pre-patch events or whatever. But
and it's just Reaping.
Yeah,
Shadowlands. Perfect.
Very cool. So let's start off with Infested. Infested is, I think this was my least favorite of them. Maybe I hated Beguiling more, actually, but Infested was, it had some, so I liked Infested in, like, one room in BFA. That was Kragmaw's room in the Underrot. In Kragmaw's room in the Underrot, you could, like, with Infested, a good group, a good strategy, a good route would, like, pull in 2 fewer pulls, and it would be really cool, and you would do, like, sometimes you'd CC infested mobs and pull non-infested mobs. Sometimes you'd CC non-infested mobs and pull infested mobs, and you'd feel really smart when you got that to work. But everywhere that wasn't just like a big blob of mobs that you could pull in whatever order you wanted was just awful with infested in it. It was so bad. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, it did feel good to mix and match pulls, like even freehold to an extent.
Freehold, yeah, I was thinking that as well.
Parts of the dungeon, whereas like you could CC from 4 or 5 different packs, and you're pulling multiple packs together, and then you're pulling a big pack of infested together. Like that felt good, and it made you feel smart. But there were so many times where it's on these like mini bosses or unCCable mobs, and it's like, okay, well, I guess you just kill those alone. I mean, there wasn't counterplay to a lot of their infested placement was, I think, the biggest problem.
Or if there was counterplay, there was like one obvious counterplay, and that was just what you did, and there was no like instead of giving you decisions, it took decisions away for you in the dungeon.
Yeah. Okay, so seasonal affixes as a whole, would you keep them or remove them? Because personally, I'm a fan of seasonal affixes if done well. Like, so let's just give it the caveat that say they're done well. I personally enjoy seasonal affixes and like how they keep the dungeons fresh even later on into the expansion. Because okay, we are a year and a half, almost 2 years into this expansion. Oh wait, hold on, are we over 2 years into this expansion now?
No, we're under 2.
Yeah, okay, so we're a year and a half into this expansion, and the dungeons are still fairly new, and people are still learning new things about Awakened and all that. So I actually do enjoy the seasonal affixes in terms of how they keep the dungeons fresh, as long as they are done well.
I agree. Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
I agree. I agree. It keeps it pretty fresh. Beguiling, although it felt more like infested.
Beguiling was the worst.
Done poorly.
Yeah.
Done poorly. Seasonal affix.
Done poorly, and it was like, wait, I've done this affix before, except instead of worms, it's elves.
And they beat me down. They actually murdered me.
Yeah, beguiling. So beguiling and infest. I think that what they need to do is they need to have this like check before they make an affix, and it's like, hey, is there only one way to handle this? Like, is this going to restrict choices or increase choices for players? Because both Reaping and Awakened like increased choices. You had so many different ways you could handle those affixes, so many different strategies to deal with them, and they weren't active the whole dungeon as well. That's one of the nice things about Reaping and Awakened is that Reaping 5 times per dungeon you have a Reaping experience, and the rest of the dungeon is not affected. Awakened 4 times per dungeon you have an Awakened experience or less, and the rest of the dungeon is unaffected. Or you can use the portals more, but that's only positive. And then Infested and Beguiling are every single pack. Every single pack you have to deal with Infested and Beguiling, and they change. It's just the whole season. You get so fatigued from dealing with them.
So, quick question: how would you have liked if Promises of Power or Archive were our seasonal affixes instead? So, Archive, of course, is like the ICD thing. Whenever you kill a mob, you get the haste buff from Horrific Visions.
You mean Gifts of the Titans?
Gifts of the Titans, not Archive of Titans. Archive of Titans was Uldir buff.
Yeah.
Gift of the Titans or Promises of Power. And Promises of Power is that main one that you'll end up getting, the circle on the ground, where if you're not standing in it, you do 10% less damage, but if you're standing in it, you do 25% more. Would you have preferred either of those as a seasonal fix?
I think they have their merits, but Promises of Power would probably mostly feel like I'm just getting chased around out of the circle that I want to be in. That'll feel worse.
I
There's
think
a lot of movement.
Not being there at all.
I think Promises of Power is probably too small of a thing as well. Like it's not. I don't think it would feel that impactful. I do think Gift of the Titans, like fitting in some kind of buff like that into the seasonal affix, would be cool. I think it would have to be part of a more
extensive change.
Thing.
Well,
yeah.
They would have to redo the dungeon timers pretty heavily, but the dungeon timers is expansion is significantly better than Legion. I don't think we talked about that, but the timers in terms of how close they are way tighter and better suited for the dungeons. You don't have upper Karazhan's where people are 3-chesting it and shit.
Massa Chow in the chat says Leadfoot affix, please.
Shut up.
Nope.
Shut up.
Delete that comment.
Do you guys
right now.
That's a timeout. That's a swift timeout.
Yeah, Tuttle's talking about. Okay, that is very deserved. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think we're all agreed that a good seasonal affix could be good. Okay, and is better than not having seasonal affixes. It's a good thing for them to work on. I think that with Awakened they've landed in a pretty awesome one actually. So I think further iterating on that kind of idea is nice. Let's talk about the other affixes. So let's start with Tyrannical and Fortified, and have a little rantaroo about this. So who would like to rant about Tyrannical and Fortified?
Jason would.
I have been praying that they would remove these for a long time, because it's like, if you're going to balance the dungeons, baseline, then how does this even fit in? Like, the damage increases from like trash on Fortified. It's like, okay, you're restricting it one way. Like you just can't, go above a certain key level anymore because, the trash starts doing too much damage. I mean, that would be the case anyway, but it's like, just this affix, half the weeks, you just can't go above this level. Or with Tyrannical, it's the other way. It's like the bosses just start doing too much damage. It's usually Tyrannical, that's the problem. But it's the bosses start doing too much damage and they last forever. Like, it's very weird how it changes like the balancing the dungeons, and you'd think they could just get a nice set balance for all the dungeons, like how they want the dungeons to be played, and then they could just leave it at that, right? Like, the other affixes are there to change up the gameplay from week to week. Why do we need to some weeks the bosses kick your ass and take forever, and some weeks the trash mobs one shot you with their random abilities because the tank ran out of melee for half a second.
I mean, not only are they the least fun, but they're the most impactful and just the most ridiculous because they're just so unfun and unimpactful. This is a major tentpole topic of the Titanforge podcast: is delete the fuck out of Tyrannical and Fortified. That stuff is just not good for the game.
Yeah, replace them, man. Replace them with affixes that are interesting and not.
That rogue could just be axed for all I care. Like it doesn't even, we don't need
Sure.
that many rows of affixes.
I
Like
know, same. Like
dungeons-
four rows, a little too much in my opinion.
Fine by me. Fine. Yeah,
The
delete. Just
variability.
yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Just delete them. Just take them out of here. They're not like Jason's exactly right. Like we want to have difficult content for both bosses and trash, but with fortified and tyrannical, one of those two is always going to be scaled above the other, and that means if you're then doing that at the level where it's hard, the other is easy, and that's the problem. It's not the problem isn't the bosses are hard on tyrannical. The problem is that the trashes are so free and boring on tyrannical, and the bosses are the hard part. And then on fortified weeks, it's like okay, now the trash is on fortified week. It's actually fairly balanced this season, but it's still like just randomly have you hit your ceiling on one of those two types, and the other type is really easy, and that's lame. So yeah,
I just think it's hilarious how you'll do a 21. I don't know. Let's say like a 21 of one dungeon, and then on fortified the boss takes a minute and 45 seconds. Yet on tyrannical it takes actually 3 minutes, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? how has this happened to where I'm doing the same boss in the same dungeon and taking almost twice as long?
Yeah, you're just sitting
I just don't
there.
like
yeah,
the bottlenecks are bad. Like, let alone how tyrannical bosses take so long to kill sometimes with extra phases and all that. But then sometimes it caps the key level like way below what you can do on the same key on a fortified setting. Like take Whitecrest, for example, right now. People can do it on 24 fortified with the first boss not being tyrannical, the witch boss. And if you do that same key on a tyrannical on like a plus 21 without a prot warrior, you might not even be able to do it with the same exact DPS comp.
All right, let's talk about the ultimate issue, though. There's no parity between affixes. It's not just tyrannical versus fortified. It's that there's no parity in any fix in general. Like, you have
volcanic
affixes like volcanic and skittish in the same row as teaming, right? And you're like, well, these are three very different affixes.
That's not the same row.
Are they not all the level 7 row?
No, because volcanic teaming is a weak. Teaming is a level 4, right?
Okay, so teaming must be a level 4. So volcanic, skittish. What else would be on that row?
Necrotic.
Explosive, yeah.
Yeah.
Necrotic and explosive. Like, okay,
explosive.
So yeah, okay. So there's no parity. It is a huge part of the problem, and it's the same with tyrannical and fortified. If there was parity between tyrannical and fortified, then it would be okay-ish, but there never can be, nor there ever will be. Like you can't expect them to make those equitable because there just can't be. And it's the same with some of the other fixes. Like, I don't know. Maybe in general, I think the higher end community would like them to be less impactful, but I think most of the other fixes are okay in terms of how impactful they are. Some of them are a little bit more egregious than others, but they have been nerfing down. They nerfed down quaking. I would like to see an explosive change moving in the next expansion. But they're mostly okay, whereas tyrannical and fortified are huge outliers in that regard.
Let's give some credit. As well. Necrotic changed this expansion from magic to physical. That was kind of whether that was a good or bad thing, I think it was because Death Knight was like really better against the magic thing, and then Death Knight got like a bunch of other nerfs. So that particular change, not super impactful. Quaking change though was excellent. That was one of the best things they've ever done. Was that change to quaking? So
Raging got changed too to be soothable with the introduction of some soothe mechanics on 2 classes.
That was silly, yeah. Those should either not be important enough to need to be soothed, or they should give soothe to more classes. That's another one where you're just like in the dungeon without a druid, and you're like, why, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shadow of Zolt Raging, by the way. How do you handle that as a group just getting into keys without a?
I really feel like the core of the problem with the parity of affixes, like you can't. I don't think you can actually design affixes in a way that like they're the same difficulty. I don't think it's possible. But I think the biggest problem is like the only way you are like ranking your group, you competing like against other people, is on a leaderboard where you're doing it's the highest key you've ever done on any affixes of each dungeon. And I think the biggest problem is like you don't have a reason to do like the harder weeks. If there was reason enough to do the harder weeks because that individual week was ranked on its own merits and gave you credit for how well you did on a certain week, you would have a reason to do those dungeons, and it wouldn't be like, oh, this feels terrible. Why am I doing a bolstering explosive dungeon right now? This this isn't fun. I mean, it might still be not as fun as a volcanic free week, but it's still going to be something. It's like, oh, we're doing something, we're accomplishing something, we're progressing on something, and it actually matters. But it just doesn't.
So what you're recommending is that they move, like the goalpost in terms of what you're looking to do is moved, and that's okay. So we can talk about this. What would you change about Dungeons moving into Shadowlands? What Jason effectively just recommended is like you were playing that week as an individual week, and you were only ranked against other runs on that week, and you get effectively all-star points based on that from a leaderboard. Hopefully, Blizzard implemented that gives cosmetic rewards or something.
Something to put it on par with, Arena, like, has its own system. Raid now is Hall of Fame. I mean, it's a little questionable since 100 guilds fill up Hall of Fame on the
you get a title. Like you get a title.
Yeah. Fame Slayer, great title.
Fame Slayer is a great title for that week before the other guilds on your server start getting it, and then it's no longer cool. Yeah.
But like at least there's something, right? And it's an actual leaderboard. You can check it out on Blizzard's website, and it's there. But for Mythic Plus, it's like, what did they have? They still have realm-based leaderboards. Like, what is the point? Where's the realm competition? I mean, I know that guy in our guild got realm first kill Jaden a couple months in the BFA. I mean, if that's what they're looking for, servers that are killing Kill Jaden 3 months in the Battle for Azeroth and getting a realm first achievement, maybe they have some competition on the server for doing whatever keys. But I can't think of the last time I looked at someone on the realm. I'm like, oh, I gotta beat that group that's on my realm.
Yeah, I've only done that one time at the very start of the expansion to get realm first 15 in time. That was it. Single time.
Yeah, realm first 15s, those are always fun. So what were some other changes that you'd change about Dungeons moving into Shadowlands?
Well, the
leaderboard, like the in-game leaderboard plus cosmetics, is probably a pretty good one.
It's the highest priority for me. If that was in the game, like most of this stuff wouldn't like matter as much to me because it's still like you're not forced into. It's like these 2 weeks you just need to like do nothing but spam keys for the whole week, and that's your life. It's like, no, you can still do that if you really want to, but there's other like avenues for competition and progression. Like I feel like that would be the core improvement that I would make.
Okay, so what about an affix rework? Would you want like almost a full affix rework?
I'd be fine with it. I think it would be good just to freshen up the game because we've had these affixes, most of them for 4 years or something. And I mean, some of them are decent, but they range from like inconsequential almost to completely game changing. And that, as of now, is not like the best situation. And if they don't come up with the leaderboard system, then they're going to have to do something with it because there's some though that probably just need to go. Like,
yeah,
obviously Tyrannical Fortified, but like Skittish feels really bad with threat now. I mean, not this patch because you just Twilight Dev and everything's fine, but at the beginning of the expansion, man, Skittish was insane. You just
really hard.
You can hold threat against healers.
Skittish is still bad for for lower ranked player. Could you imagine just being like a less geared tank or whatever? Like you're just 10 item levels below your friends in your tank and you're trying to hold threat. You're not playing a prot warrior, you're trying to hold threat with Skittish. It's really scuffed. That's the thing. Like I don't see if there's any real merit to Skittish as an affix either, because like who is it good for? It's not like it's not like you can ever try that hard to have like there are so many situations with Skittish where you can do everything right and it doesn't work, or you can do everything wrong and still hold threat. It's just based on what your character is wearing and what spec you are on.
So what about the keystone system itself, like acquisition of keystones? Because as it currently stands right now, at the end of BFA, we had this thing where at the end of the dungeon, after you finish your keystone, you get that keystone back, and you just pray that it's not King's Rest or Siege of Borealis.
Yeah, I was never a big fan of the randomness because like pushing keys meant doing a bunch of irrelevant keys until you got the one you wanted. That was always kind of the case. And it hasn't gotten better. I liked it when you could delete keystones and get a new one. That was kind of a good system.
It was a good mid-ground. Yeah.
Being able to refund a bad key and get, a slightly lower different key, I think is fine. I would prefer to have 3 keys pop up and you choose one sort of thing, or it's a dual or triple dungeon keystone where it's this could work in any of these dungeons. I mean, you're still going to run into some randomness, but at least you have some choices there. It's also hard because their balancing of the dungeons themselves is kind of all over the place.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, the dungeons can be imbalanced. I don't think any of us expect the dungeons to be balanced super close. There is some margin of error, but if you could actually pick the dungeon, I think it would be a lot better, and it would also allow for grassroots tournaments, which would be helpful in a different way as well.
I've been firmly in favor of war games style keystones where you could just walk in on a fake keystone in any dungeon, pick a level and do it, right? You could do it for practice purposes if you have a really high key and you're okay, we don't want to scuff this super high key that would be a world first if we got it, so let's go in on a fake keystone, try it out a few times, see what really screws us, and then you can actually run it. That was sort of the case in Legion before they did depleted key, or after they did
back when keys depleted. Yeah,
I hated that system.
I hated depleted keys too, man. Yeah,
I hated that system too, but it was because they were holding the rewards back from you, right? It's if you could choose to do a key and be I don't want rewards from this, I just want to do the key, and it didn't count for anything, that should still be allowed. It should be, if you want to do it, you can do it. Depleted keystones was if you screw it up, you don't get anything, and you have to do it because that keystone's not going anywhere. If you want another one, you better complete that key or drop it a bunch of levels. And it, and then you get another one, push it up again.
Well, could you drop key levels? You couldn't, right? You just kept the key depleted.
Oh no,
right?
You couldn't. Yeah, before they. Yeah, you're right.
Impossible, right?
That was just that depleted key was sitting in your bag.
Dead keys.
Yeah.
You just didn't get loot. You just did not get loot for running it back. That was that's such a trash system.
I don't actually think that they should be infinitely practicable though. I think that keys, it being important that you you put the key in, you do well. You don't get to practice it as many times as you want. I think that's a good thing for live keys. I think there's this effect on the tournament realm of practicing and getting your pull right and doing it for 8 hours and then having it all matter on the day of the tournament, and that's kind of cool there, but I don't think it would be that fun on live to be spending your time in a practice mode forever until you get it right thing. I think it's more awesome for it to be okay, we've pushed up our first 24 here, we got to get this right, we know how to do this from a 22, we just gotta, it's gonna be really hard now, and maybe you don't do it and the key goes back down to 23 and you gotta get another shot at it, and then maybe that shot you can do it.
All right, so let's move on. I think we nailed dungeons pretty heavily. I think we talked about what we wanted to see moving to Shadowlands. I think we're good on that.
All right, let's advance to raids then. So we started off this expansion with Uldir, which I personally liked Uldir a lot, actually. I think that Mithrax was a pretty good fight on progression, and I think that Gahoon, outside of Phase 1, was an excellent fight for the start of an expansion. So I was pretty big on Uldir. Jason, I see you've got some more criticism perhaps to add here for Uldir. So what did you think about Uldir starting off there?
Well, not for myself. For the really bad tuning at the beginning with Fetid was
right.
Insane. And
that wasn't something we really ran into, right? We were still working on. We were working on Zekvaz Prague.
Yeah, Parse Culture wasn't there yet, but it was a problem, and that was the first raid that Method was streaming, I think, right? So everyone saw it, and it just wasn't getting fixed. Limit got there first, and it's they're just stuck, they're stuck. Method gets there, they're stuck. It's okay, maybe we should nerf the fight, because obviously, our advice to just, kill the ads faster isn't working. So maybe there's actually a tuning issue, and turns out there really was, and finally they fixed it. That's bad from an optics standpoint. By the time we got there, it wasn't an issue, but for those guilds it kind of sucked. And then I think my biggest problem was how anti-melee Mithrax in particular it was brutal for melee. Running more than like 2 or 3, and you're running into issues where it's like they have nowhere to stand, or they're gonna, both get mind controlled and nuke the whole raid when they get knocked out. It was rough, and Gahoon was better, but it wasn't that much better. You still had to keep a good spread in the last phase in particular. And then my biggest problem with Gahoon was the RNG factor of the boils. Like in the last phase, you could just get 3 like clumped up in one part of the room. It's like, what do you do? Yeah, I guess you sacrifice 2 people to just get MC'd and die. Or you get a pull where they're all spread out and it's super easy.
Yeah, do you remember post nerf when they went down to 2 boils from 3?
Oh yeah, I remember a certain guild got there that very week. Very interesting.
That was an interesting coincidence. But yeah, back when we were progressing on that and dealing with those 3 boils, that was, I don't know. I actually really like that mechanic though. Aside from like sometimes you get RNG'd by it, but even then it felt like you could actually do a lot of counterplay to those.
Yeah, I think Cahoon was a pretty good fight. Aside from phase 1, which was insanely boring. But otherwise it was pretty good. The last phase in particular felt like a really intense burn where it was like playing it right, felt rewarding, and standing on the boils made you feel, kind of dumb, and feel kind of dumb. Not the boils, the poppers.
Anyways,
Poppers,
I think Uldir was one of the better intro raids historically.
Definitely better than Emerald Nightmare, Mogashan Vaults and stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think Jason says that he thinks High Mall was a slightly better raid. I think they're comparable in terms of.
Yeah, they're both good.
They're both good, not great. I think the story of this expansion is there are a lot of good raids. I don't think anything would be described as a great raid.
Crucible of Storms, I think, was a great.
It's only a 2 boss raid.
Yeah,
it was a great 2 boss raid. I think it was the fact that it was only a 2 boss raid is kind of, I would kind of deduct for that, but it was good. It was very good. I agree with that.
The bosses were superb, especially Unat. Was one of the best bosses I think they've ever had in the game.
That was a pretty cool boss.
I'm a fan of the 2 boss raid. Actually, like the mid tier, just like random 2 boss raid, and you're like, I like this. This is nice pacing.
I thought Ajara was like awful. I thought Ajara was the worst. Ajara and Zakul were, I think, the worst things that ever happened to me.
There are going to be bad bosses in an expansion. Like there are always going to be bad bosses in an expansion, but I think like sweeping statement wise, I think the expansion raids were pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't know. Ajara and Zakul really made Eternal Palace pretty sour note for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I hated like Crucible of Storms because my guild died. Then I had to completely I was like,
don't hate the guild.
Died
okay, I think that was kind of an effect of the 2 boss raid though. The 2 boss raid, as nice as the fighting was, or the fights were, I think 2 boss raid just doesn't really fit into the schedule of WoW anymore. I think they probably just needed those 2 bosses to be the last 2 bosses of BOD. I think that's the move.
I probably especially with like the world first race and stuff, trying to prepare for a 2 boss raid is like so much more difficult. And it's like, okay, is this going to last, a day? Is this going to last a week? I mean, Helya didn't last more than 2, 3, or 4 days or something. Like she went fast, I'm pretty sure. And Unat lasted over a week. So obviously it could have been a thing. But if we all knew like going into BODs, like we're going to get a 2 boss raid after BOD, just letting you guys know, that would have been better. We would have, been able to prepare for it and actually take steps to do it. But it was like almost a surprise. Like, hey, doing 2 boss raid. What's up?
Yeah, I do think Nyalotha was like one of the lesser like end tier or end expansion raids that we've seen in a hot minute. But even then, it wasn't like astronomically bad. I think if N'Zoth is a better fight, then I think it's overall seen in a little bit more favorable light, though.
Yeah. I mean, I do think N'Zoth was probably the most skill testing end boss they've made, where you could really tell like the quality of guilds purely based on how well they ranked on that boss compared to all the other ones. So I think that was a really nice part about it. But other than that, it was definitely, there was some things to be desired on that on that raid. I think that the immunity stacking actually was something that.
Oh, dude, Radan and N'Zoth. What the fuck is up with 10 immunities for N'Zoth, and you need like if your melees don't have an immunity, they have to walk away from the melee stack. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, the immune thing is so weird to see it coming back in as well after they nuked immunities from orbit in Tomb, and it seems like they kind of just forgot that like they need to make sure that boss abilities don't encourage you to stack immunities with this raid. Also,
such a bad design.
What was going on with Il'gynoth? How does the no dispel strategy make it? A, how does it make it to live? And B, how does it make it past week 1?
Okay,
what happened there?
We saw a lot of pre-immune stuff, and then we saw Ilg kind of cheesed with the no dispel. Dude, Ilg is such a good boss if you actually have to dispel it too, which is so sad that it's been ruined by that one no dispel strategy. You're just like, what the fuck?
Also, like Il'gynoth, Raden, N'Zoth, they've changed all these bosses to the developers notes say to make it easier for non-immunities groups, but they are literally just these set of nerfs that make it easier regardless of whether or not you're immuning or doing the dispel strat or whatever, right? Like, so they're like, okay, we're gonna nerf Harvest Thoughts damage. You take that damage, also if you're in a non-immunity group. We're gonna increase the amount of sanity you restore. We're gonna reduce the sanity damage from that. But like, that still just makes the fight. It's still a much better fight to use immunities on. Like, the immunity strategy got a lot better too. It didn't help the non-immunity strat close that gap really between how good those two strats were.
Yeah, so maybe I feel less favorably about Nihilith than I thought previously, but like, I mean, their raids are normally really good.
They just didn't know what to do about the immunity on like Raden. They did well. That was a good nerf to bring immunities back out of like line, or make them not the strat, because like being able to soak the void collapse made all the difference. But with this, it's like they don't even know what the actual problems are with the boss. Like, it's not that it is sort of that you take a bunch of sanity damage, but it's also because the timings are so gross. Like, you have trying to do a soak in the middle of 2 evokes right after a paranoia, and then another, like, you have to soak and paranoia happens during the soak. What are y'all gonna do? Just stack up and go insane on the first phase?
Yeah, like if you don't have the sanity to be able to deal with that? Yeah, exactly. That doesn't make any sense. Other things that have happened this expansion that are pretty good though. Race to World First is now being streamed. That's
Poggies.
Yeah, pretty big. That's actually a really big deal. That's good moving forward for the health of World of Warcraft, I think. And it seems like they're making an effort to make sure that the raids stay on a similar difficulty curve tier to tier. They're also slapping down nerfs at what feels like appropriate times, just even with the eye test. Like, there's no I don't think there's any rationale or like reasoning on when the nerfs are coming, but it's just the eye test, and I feel like they normally hit an okay point in time of when the changes end up happening.
I think Unot got hit too hard too quickly, but that's just because I was progressing on the fight when it was like the hard version, and we were in the last phase, and I was like, all right, this is really exciting, and then they nerfed it, and I was like, no, it's not as fun anymore.
Yeah, sure, of course you're gonna feel like that, but at the same time, like it was probably time. The fight was a bit rough for even the hardcore casual guilds. Like, dude, that fight was.
That's the problem with a two boss tier, is that they didn't have Opulence to spend a week on. They didn't have Mekatorch to spend a week on, so they got to Unot fairly quickly compared to how they would have if there were a bunch of like medium difficulty filler bosses to take 50 pulls on along the way.
Yeah. Generally though, difficulty tier to tier is pretty good. Race World First is exciting.
All right, we still got a lot. There are a lot of things left for BFA, but we'll kind of rapid fire the most of the remaining topics here. We can obviously spend a little bit of time talking about some of them, but
I think AP and Azurite are probably going to take up a decent amount of time.
We'll spend our time on those for sure. We do have allied races as a new feature this expansion, which I think nobody really has any problems with that. That's kind of a
it's more good than it is bad.
That's a big fine. Old okay. The expansion launch was worldwide this time. Okay.
Again, more good than it is bad as long as the server maintenance is okay. I mean,
not for Titanforge, but for everyone
else. It was worldwide, and then we got it a day later on Titanforge. That was nice. We got War Mode, which I guess cool.
Again, more good than it is bad, I think.
I don't really like the incentive of turning on War Mode for PvE rewards, and then you just War Mode is full of 90% people who don't actually want to PvP. and like are just hoping that everybody can agree to not PvP and get better rewards. It's kind of silly.
There is a non-verbal agreement whenever you see somebody out there doing the Veil or the Uldum dailies where you just like, I'm just here to collect the bonus, bro. Don't fucking fight me. And then you're both like clicking the things to try to like turn
tag
the
on them
mummies
as well.
to, yeah, exactly, to get the tags and stuff. And you're like, all right, thanks. I appreciate
So
you.
awkward too. You're like, please don't attack me.
Yeah, and
You're like, oh, please don't fucking fight me. I'm just trying to move on, bro.
I have this experience where I'm like, pretend I'm like friendly with an alliance guy for like 3 minutes, and we're doing these quests together. I'm like, oh, this guy's great, and then just like another horde player comes in and attacks them, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm attacking this person now because PvP is happening, and I gotta participate.
I'm too soft. I feel bad. I like start crying on their shoulder while my friend kills them. I'm just like, no, man, he was my friend.
Okay, let's move on to the last kind of main expansion-sized stuff that went on this expansion. So, artifact power. Who would like this rant? Jason, I think you might be well equipped for this one. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think AP was like their response to WAD's like not having enough to do, and then like player progression ended. So you were like, okay, I've finished my character, I'm done, I don't have to do anymore, I can just quit the game now, right? Like that's how it works. But they, in typical Blizzard fashion, solved this in so many different ways that they actually made more problems. AP being like this just constant slog every tier, where it wouldn't be such a problem if the stuff you had to do to actually gain it was stuff you wanted to do. Like if you could just do raid and that get your weekly allotted AP from that, I wouldn't really care. It'd just be like, okay, this is a thing. If I can't raid this week, then I can catch up with world quests or islands, whatever. But uncapped means you're kind of forced into, and huge power gains means you're kind of forced into like grinding it hard so that your character's actually the best it could be for progression, at least at a level where you think that matters, which I think most of us would agree we are. So that always felt bad, and
I would agree. I would 100% agree. And what I wrote for the pros for this is it keeps people playing the game longer, which I think we all agree is a good thing. Soft nerfs to content over time, which is also fine. And it's constant goals for the players to achieve. But then the downsides of this is like, okay, a lot of your AP farming is tied to island expeditions and world quests, which are just some of the least fun content imaginable. And whenever you do get like 1 point like in your neck, it doesn't feel like a huge gain, but like collectively somebody who's 70 versus somebody who's 80 is such a huge gain that you feel incentivized, like you feel like almost required to do it, even though it sucks and it's just not fun.
I think that the solution they came up for cloak level of like you can get 1 more per week after like doing a bit of a grind at the start is kind of perfect, and it sounds like that's
done well.
It sounds like they're going to do that in Shadowlands as well.
Sure.
They said in Shadowlands like you're going to be able to earn some power, and it's going to be hard capped each week, and anything you earn after that is just going towards cosmetics.
I think you're absolutely spot on, Dretness. I think the cloak is artifact power, except done well because it is capped, and like there are catch ups for people who are slacking on coalescing visions in order to be able to catch up with it.
Okay, to be fair, a lot of the catch-ups for cloaks has been that they've hot-fixed in increased coalescing vision rewards like multiple times this expansion.
I don't hate that. Well, they didn't want you to get rank 3 breath before the world first guild killed N'Zoth. Realistically, that's why that nerf came in whenever it did. They didn't want you to like chain run like 1,000 visions like the first 3 weeks. So they're trying to pace it. I think it's very intentional. I don't think it's a reaction. Personally.
Yeah, well,
maybe it is reactionary, but I think it's intentional.
Like day 1 world quests were, I think, they could have given more than like 50 coalescing visions per world quest, and like 1,000 coalescing visions for your daily lesser vision. Like I think that the buffs, it's good that you got more sources of coalescing visions over time, but I think that they could maybe next time come up with a little bit more of an elegant system than the like just hot fixing it every week. But yeah, I think that was a good change. One very different thing that happened this expansion as well was tier sets have gone away for the first time in WoW's history. So this is in the first expansion where we've not had any tier sets from Raid, and this has been a very unpopular thing among a lot of loud high-end players.
Let me hit this one first.
Okay,
so I generally think that them removing tier sets wasn't the most terrible thing for the game, but I think that their solution of Azurite was not great. I think that tier sets bring a lot of benefit in terms of like they change up your class tier to tier. Sometimes you get the 2% tier bonus, sometimes you get the 10%. So you'll have just natural power swings. They're directed specifically at your class. So it'll end up affecting your rotations more so than Azurite ended up doing. Just because, like, a lot of times with Azurite, you're taking more of the generic traits, or even the traits that end up affecting your class don't end up affecting your class enough, personally. Like, there's some, like Glimmer. Glimmer is a Azurite trait that has done incredibly well. Moonkin has some really good ones, too. But, by and large, Azurite is not that fun. Plus, it's been expansion long, so it got very boring. And then in addition to that, I don't care about transmog, but a lot of people do care about transmog, and the removal of the tier sets in terms of like a transmog effect is pretty big for some people. So I think those are all my opinions on that. I think in general, the removal of tier sets to replace with Azurite has been poor. I am a thumbs down on that one.
I agree. I think that Azurite did not do a good job at all of filling that void. I think that the void can be filled by something other than tier sets, though. Like I
do not disagree with that.
I think that we can get there without needing to bring back tier sets necessarily. Like if Blizzard is hard locked in to not bringing back tier sets, which it sounds like they kind of are, I think that they can hit that same effect with legendary items or with systems like with patch level systems, like essences could have been done in a way that they gave that same effect. Corruptions could have been done in the same way that they gave that effect.
I just wish that they affected your character in a way that tier sets did. That's the only thing that I wish, is that I hate that Azurite just does not affect your character in a way that tier sets previously did, because they were only geared towards like the utility and the damage of the class, and there were not generic traits. In addition to that, I think it's really comical that we have 5 sets locked. We have head, neck, shoulders, chest, and now the cape, which whenever they removed tier sets, they said that they hated the fact that you didn't have enough slots available and that you were always locked into playing tier sets.
That was a different effect, though. That like they didn't want it to be so that you'd get like pants dropping and you'd be like, I can't equip these pants because I've already, my pants are part of my 2-set 4-set. And the fact that your necklace is locked in doesn't matter because necklaces don't drop, right? Like cloaks don't drop, so it doesn't.
Okay, sure, but being locked into that many pieces of gear also feels bad in a completely different way, right?
I just wish the Azurite traits were like the tier sets from Legion, like Titles was saying, because instead of getting cool effects like reducing the cooldown on something or giving you a large amount of healing when you press an ability that previously it now just gives you stats. It's like random stats almost across the board for Azurite traits. I guess some classes do have very specific enhancing Azurite traits, but there's not a lot out there, I don't feel like. And
none of them change you from tier to tier, which like
right.
That was my favorite part of tier sets, was like, okay, in Temple in Tomb of Sargeras, my character plays differently than it did in Nighthold. And that's not really been true this expansion. It's been like, all right, I have the same Azurite traits are my good ones, or maybe they rebalance.
Sometimes I will get a Starfall tier set, sometimes I will get a Star Surge tier set, and it's like, okay, sure, I'm okay with these. But then it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to play the whole entire Azurite for the full expansion. In addition to that, fuck reforging.
True.
Yes.
True.
I think I can get a collective true on that one, but fuck reforging. That is so dumb.
Reforging has been, I think, if you could change one line of code in BFA and make it the best, it would be to delete reforging. Like, if you delete that reforging cost, I would be so happy. There would have been so many times where I would have gotten to have fun, and I just didn't get to because I went to the reforging person and was like, well, my reforge is 10k. If I want to reforge 3 pieces and then be able to reforge back for raid tomorrow, that's going to cost me 400k. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Essences. Imagine if you had to reforge essences.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was
okay. It's actually my number 3.
Brought it up too, right? In the board meeting or their dev meetings. Like, what if we did the same thing? You had to go to the same guy and reforge essences.
I'm just waiting for the logical conclusion where it's like you have to buy a WoW token to change your essences, and it's like, oh yeah, you just in a rested area you use the WoW token Tome of the Tranquil wallet, and it lets you reforge, and otherwise you can.
Tome of the Tranquil WoW token. Yeah. All right, let's move on to
Battle.net credit card reader.
Holy shit!
Which like I I already spent all of my money on corrupted items, so I don't know how they're expecting me to do this because I already bought 4 million gold worth of corruption items, so I'm out of money, right? Like,
all right, Dratnus, lead us into corruption then with your big wallet of BNet bucks.
Wait. Upon further thinking about this, I think it's my number 3 choice for deleting something from BFA. Number 1 is Toldagor, and number 2 is give everyone account-wide essences and then delete reforging.
Okay, yeah, but like I'm saying, like a small change that would have a big positive effect, like just delete one line of code.
Toldagor.
Yeah, Toldagor is a line.
No way, man.
That's a big library.
So the corruption system is one that has some cool pros. It's powerful, different specs like some different corruptions, but there are some big drawbacks. I think that so let's talk a little bit more about corruption pros. Tanks and healers can do good damage with corruption effects. It's interesting to make a decision of how much corruption to wear once you have the gear. Once you've acquired a bunch of different corruption effects, it's interesting to make the decision of like, am I 56 corruption or am I 76 or am I 36? Which of these numbers am I going to go with today for this content that I'm doing? That's a really cool thing. And I think it's a cool way to soft nerf content to give you more corruption resistance over time. I think that is a really elegant way to soft nerf the raid. The problem is it's really annoying to acquire these stupid things. The best way is like your weekly Mythic Plus box. Doing 1 Mythic Plus per week gets you the same amount of corruption as doing 50 Mythic Plus per week in terms of that. And so that's pretty silly. And you're just like out here wearing 420 World Quest gear, or the very best way to buy corruption is to buy it with
Tome of the Tranquil Wallet.
The Tome of the Tranquil Wallet, yeah. That's the BIS item here for getting corruption. So if you would just have 10 million gold, or a bunch of WoW tokens of that you're ready to spend on these, your character can just be like 40% better than other people's. Complexity limit spent like 265 million gold. Method spent, I'm sure, similar numbers. Pieces spent, I think, only 8 digits of gold, not 9, but still lots of digits of gold. Poptart corndoG, I think, spent in the low 8 digits as well of gold this expansion.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. You count raiders as gold? How does that equate?
Our raiders are certainly very corrupted, so yeah.
So the 9 digits, I see.
Yeah. We did sales to be able to finance it, so we didn't actually go into debt or anything like the other guilds did.
By purchasing mages? You did sales to buy mage?
Yeah. It was a worthwhile investment, actually. But yes, it's that is a really big downside to the system.
Yeah,
so
I think upside, very fun, very powerful, makes your character feel better, especially tanks and healers that are able to do damage. Downside is that the damage source isn't you most of the time. I don't love that like you'll look at your damage breakdown and it's like Twilight Dev is like all of your damage. So, and the acquisition process, like Dratnus said.
Twilight Dev, Infinite Stars, Echoing Void, none of these are like Gushing Wound, Twisted Appendage. None of these are things where you then play differently at all. It's just like you get a proc and it does some damage, and that's where your damage is coming from now. I think that
I don't hate it, but at the same time, it does feel bad for some people. Like for me, I don't personally care, but some other players, they do care a lot, seeing like hovering over their damage breakdown and seeing that some Gromnak getting pissed off at Infinite Stars. Big meme.
Yeah.
If just all of this stuff was like much smaller scale, like if Infinite Stars did 20% of damage, it wasn't 12% mastery on the tier 3, it was 3%. Like if these numbers were smaller, like it would still be like, interesting, but it wouldn't be like, oh,
the
wow,
less
this just
fun,
carries
though,
my
right?
character.
The numbers needed to be big to make it worth the drawback, and I think that the power being high on the corruption effects was not so bad. I think that they if they want this kind of system to be an expansion-wide system, it probably needs to tie into how classes function instead, and have corrupted effects that are more like Azerite traits that have different effects per class and change how your spells work.
It's also frustrating because this is almost like a good system. If they just made it drop on everything, like it would still take you a while to acquire the best pieces for your character, right? And there'd be a progression there. But now it's like there is no progression; it just happens to you eventually. It's like Legion legendaries taken to their most logical extreme of they could just never drop for you, except I guess the 2 you can buy on the auction house.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but all content has the exact same drop rate for corruption, except for Mythic Plus and Arena, which is lower than average.
Wait, horrific visions don't have higher chance?
Is that confirmed?
World Quest, raids, and horrific visions all have the same drop chance of getting the corruption gear, but then Mythic Plus and Arena are lower.
Interesting.
Into Dungeon Arena.
And then they have the one guaranteed weekly. Yeah.
The raid BOEs, except for the ring, are also guaranteed corrupted.
Exactly. That one is a weird one to me. That one's very strange. But I think in general, I like the corruption system more than I hate it. The acquisition system needs a lot of work. I like the drawbacks. I really like the drawbacks for the power gain. I think that's kind of cool.
So
I like that summary. That's how I feel too.
Burrito J and Ghost Giraffe in chat have some good points as well. Ineffable Truth and Whispered Truths, the Hunter Bow and the Ineffable Truth effect. Those are, I think, corruptions done well that like affect how your class plays and things. And I think Glimpse of Clarity also kind of falls into that spot. So I think those are really good examples of like powerful corruptions that are they give you agency. They affect what you do rather than just proccing. Twilight Dev, at least I guess you have to look in the right direction, which there is some skill to that actually. Like Twilight Dev aiming is actually, there is some gameplay to that at least too.
Sometimes there's not counterplay though. When you have to kite and you strafe away as a tank, you're just like, come on, why did it proc now?
Get jumping.
Yeah, you can try, but still, sometimes you have to face away.
Yeah.
All right, quick little, since we're hitting everything in the expansion, let's just talk about Benthic real quick.
I think that's dog shit. I think that was a unanimous down vote on that. I think they even admitted that was bad.
Yeah, they just needed to not have sockets, man. If those things couldn't roll sockets, we wouldn't have had to bother with them so much.
Some people would still be like hard after that crit damage one.
Yeah, but you'd have one pair of boots on a character instead of like 4 slots with Benthic Biss that was never getting replaced. I don't know. It's so silly, man. We also saw the removal of Master Looter this expansion to be replaced entirely with personal loot in all settings. What do you guys think of this change?
I've heard only negativity on that one. I don't think I've heard anyone defend that choice. Have you guys?
It's awful. Like,
yeah, just in general, it should be what it was in Legion, where it's available if you're in a full guild group. I don't like the concept of Master Looter I don't like the concept of Master Loot for pugs. I do like the opportunity to Master Loot raid because, we're raiding in a guild. Like all of us are raiding in a guild where we are still Master Looting, except the person has looted it and then must trade their piece that they got off the boss away to somebody else, which inevitably feels worse than it.
Yeah, it's literally Master Loot, but you briefly get to hold on to an item that you want, and then you just have to give it away. So it's Master Loot, except it's worse. Or you can hold, like, some guilds maybe have decided that they're just personal loot guilds now with this, and they don't want to bother, and, like, guilds are choosing to nerf themselves, like, so that's silly.
Yeah, and
I guess the upside of Master... I guess the upside of Master Looter is that you're able to, get more loot directly to one armor class / role type that you would really like it on if you are doing these full... one armor type splits, but even then it's like, what the...
I hate how you can like be a healer or something and you have your best in slot trinkets and then you get a neutral trinket drop and you just can't trade it because that's also a DPS trinket and you don't have one yet, so you better hold on to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand. Some of these rules do not make sense.
Yeah.
Wands also can't be traded.
You can trade items.
Already have a wand.
Yep, you just it's silly. It's very silly, and I'm fine with it being. I'm very fine with it for pugs. Like I think Master Looter in a pug situation is more exploitable than not. But
agreed.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think in pugs, 100% should always be personal loot. I think in raid you should have the opportunity to Master Loot if you want to. And I didn't even hate whenever it was almost incentivized to personal loot. There was like a 0.5% chance that you would get like higher loot. Like there was a very low percent chance that you get one additional piece of loot whenever they were personal looting. Last expansion in Legion, Master Looter is just a better system overall. I think for guild groups.
All right, the last big topic that we have to cover. Well, actually, we've got a couple more.
I have an unpopular opinion about essences.
Let's talk about essences. Tettles, lead us in here with your unpopular opinion.
Somebody else starts. I'll hit you up. I'll hit you on the back end.
All right, so Essences, we had an acquisition problem here where it is horrifically bad on a second character to get any essences, like to get many essences. There are many essences that are just such a pain to get on alts. The reason for this is that most expansion features, like artifact power, like legendaries or whatever, throughout the course of the patch cycle, they get easier to acquire. It's easy to get to neck level 75 now. In a way, it takes like 10% of the AP that it took on patch release day, and that's a good thing. Essences don't have the same kind of catch up, with the exception of a few small targeted hotfixes they've put in. There's just no. It takes you the same amount of time to get these essences as it did when patch 8.2 landed. I'm happy to spend 30 hours grinding working towards an essence on a main character. I'm happy to spend, a month's worth of time gating on a main character of coming back every day or whatever, but I'm not okay with having to do that then on the alts as well. I think that the alts need to not behave that way.
Okay, so let me just ask then. How did you feel about Legion Legendaries, WoD Legendary Ring, or Mista Pandaria Cloak? That were all, like, Legion Legendaries took far more time than that. And it was RNG.
Legion Legendaries, though, by the end of the expansion, were good. Essences, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I'm never going to get to have fun on it all. Legion Legendaries were fixed on 7.2.
Legion Legendaries, even with Wakened Essence, took a week and a half to be able to purchase one.
Legion Legendaries were the biggest. Like, they were a cool gameplay element, but the acquisition was the biggest failure of...
Oh, yeah, I agree.
In my opinion, like, any expansion that's ever existed, like, that acquisition of Legendaries and Legion were worse than acquiring anything else in any other expansion by far. The RNG of it, especially, like, all the way until, the very, very last patch, where it was like everything was already done, and you were just, killing time until the next expansion. That's when they were like, okay, fine, we're fine with you choosing what you want. Like, you could not get your Pride as on the tank for once, and have that count as all of your specs legendaries. Like, because if you got a Sephuz and a Pride as, like, you could no longer get tank legendaries quickly or something, or DPS legendary. Like, it's just, oh yeah, if you got a tank specific, then you could get a DPS specific like a day later, or you could get a dual spec, and you're just screwed.
And I mean, for me personally, essences are a strictly better version of legendaries, except you can target them. And I don't necessarily need them to be account wide because they are targetable in that way.
Legendaries had upside that essences don't have, which is that, like, there was legitimately great gameplay that legendaries enabled. Essences, there's like Lucid Major is cool and fun. Vision Major is cool and fun. The others are just not, like, fun and to play with, really. They're, like, for the most part, it's just a system that you have, like, a 2-minute cooldown button, you press it every 2 minutes, and it does some damage, and it's not interesting. So Legion Legendaries... Legion Legendaries...
Conflict... Sorry, go ahead.
They like changed your character in interesting ways. They did all kinds of cool stuff. Keg Smash Shoulders were cool and changed how your character played. There were, like, all sorts of different effects that were on those, and essences are not at all like that. And, like, I think that the upside is lower, and the drawback here, the acquisition, is worse than Legion. Like, Legion Legendaries, they fixed the acquisition problem by the end of Legion, but acquisition was a huge problem there too. And this is, like, yes, it's targetable, it's deterministic, but the targetable way for me to get Condensed Life Force is to go into Azara's Eternal Palace and clear that raid for 3 weeks. The targeted way for me to get Purification Protocol, I guess I can just spend 10,000 gold and get that, or 100,000 gold, so that's okay. But to get Conflict and Strife, it's like, I have to do Arena on my character for 4 weeks.
All right.
To get Blood of the Enemy, I have to do 20 hours of Battlegrounds, like...
I do think Blood and Conflict are a bit of outliers in that regard of, like, how to farm them, but I think that those are the only two really...
That's because you're, for you, PvP is not something that you want to do on your alt, right? Like, you don't want to go do Battlegrounds on your alt, but there are players for whom,
No, I'm just talking about in terms of time spent. I think in terms of time spent, I think Blood of the Enemy and Conflict and Strife are just a bit over the top.
I think Jarno said a good point with the Guardian of Azeroth too. I'd add that to the list, like previous content that you would never do on this day unless for that specific. I think that legendaries hit a good spot in the last patch of Legion because there was currency to get them. They were a lot easier to get, and they were obtainable from all forms of content at the same time. I think if essences were given a second way to obtain at this point, even if they weren't account wide, if you could just like accumulate currency from your weekly chest and Mythic Plus and PvP the same way that you'd grind them specifically, if that would give you some kind of currency to buy any essence, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, I think that would be like if after I got rank 3 on my main, any further progress I could send to alts for that same essence, great. You know, that would also fix this problem for me.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it's a targeted system. It's the exact same as the WoD Legendary Ring, Legion Legendary's Mop Cloak, except it's targeted. That's about how I feel about it.
Yeah, okay, but you have 2 characters, right? Like, have you ever thought about starting up a 3rd character? Have you ever like had that experience of like looking at a neck with 1 green and 12 gray essences and just seeing this like huge yawning gap in front of you before you're like remotely playable?
Essences.
You don't, but yeah, you have to. You get your shopping list of like what 4 essences you need to get on your character, and it's like, all right, I have to do like these 4 different types of content, and you're just like, well, I wanted to play this character, but I guess I'm gonna reroll a different one that doesn't require me to get these essences that I hate farming.
Okay, so I mean, then you don't want it that bad. Like, I mean, that's a major problem is that you have to commit like 6 weeks in advance, like 3 to 6 weeks in advance to be able to actually play a character. But like, it's not any different than any other expansion, and pretending it is just like not correct.
I think that's false. I think someone that wants to play an alt is going to play their main while they build their alt. So like, you're going to do main content every day on your main with your friends, but then you're also trying to gear your alt. And if you're just doing that on the side, if you work a full-time job, you have like maybe an hour a night on average to farm your alt, and that would literally take months to get that thing ready. Where in Legion, you could kind of just accumulate legendaries by doing your weekly key and getting essence or getting currency at the end.
It takes 4 weeks of daily battlegrounds to get blood.
That's a lot of battlegrounds.
That's a lot of time.
That is a lot of battlegrounds, but it takes 4 weeks of daily battlegrounds, and battlegrounds are on average like 20 minutes.
Okay, I mean, 4 weeks of daily battleground wins. You got the queue.
Sure.
You got the queue. You've got to win. Like,
yeah, it's really shitty. But at the same time, like legendaries are, it's all the same. It's all the same shit, like shit system. But pretending like it's not is.
It's not the same though, because like with legendaries, you could get your legendaries by doing Mythic Plus. You could get your legendaries by doing raiding. You didn't have to do specific content on your alt. My alt, if I want Null Barrier on it, besides being able to buy it, I would just have to go to, you know, Mechagon and do that daily every day, right? If I want Lucid Dreams on my character, I have to go do these ally quests. Like, I can't just be like, all right, I'm gonna
So you hate that it's targetable?
No, I think being targetable is fine, but if it's going to be targetable, it needs to nerf for alts and for people returning to the game. Like, could you imagine returning to this game and not having played 8.2 and just like looking at months ahead of you to get your essences on a main character at this point?
I literally am in a Discord with people that I was in a guild with in Legion who are saying that exact sentence. Like, they look at the grind and they just can't do it. Like, they're just going to wait till. Like, that's just a gain for Blizzard if they make essences more obtainable.
Yeah, there are so many people who have chosen to just not play the game rather than interact with the essence system on a first character app that they didn't, start getting it on, or on looking at creating a second character, or not even a second character, like a third character at this point. Like, looking at that, the prospects of doing that is just so draining, having already done it once or twice.
Especially if you're trying to like get back into Mythic Plus, like with how the meta shifts, every season, like you have to start that grind from scratch, or you had to have been doing it the whole time. And if you want to do something in Mythic Plus this season because it's like, oh, Awaken, that looks fun, but like you didn't do anything in Beguiling because you saw Beguiling, it was like, oh, that doesn't look fun. You're starting from scratch on a system that you've already been through.
I mean, but you've had to phone it. You've had to phone it in for like multiple weeks. Like
Jason has Jason had this experience where he wanted to get back into tanking Mythic Plus. And he has a warrior that doesn't have any essences on it, that is, the character that would be good for tanking Mythic Plus on, or a DH with no essences that could also work maybe. And like, it's just this prospect of like, hey, I want to do these Awaken keys. That sounds fun. Let's do those. Oh wait, I can't. Like, I have got so much grind ahead of me before that's something I can do. Like, maybe I have the energy now to do a little bit of that grind, but like, there's 4 weeks of it ahead of me before I can have fun. That's not the fun shouldn't be gated behind 4 weeks for alts.
And Legion Legendary is the same, or worse, but
Well, I mean, okay, so you're saying that it's okay to take a okay, I don't think it's like not okay to take a multi-month break, but at the same time you should be punished and you should have to actually catch up, and it shouldn't only be based on gear. Like there should be something that you have to
AP.
do.
Right,
Okay.
AP is
dog shit
perfect though.
system.
AP is so much better for alts coming back though, because if you're an alt and you want to get to neck level 80, it is so much better than it's so much better than essences, right? Like AP is 10% of the grind that it was on patch release day, and that's a great system that they should be adding back. They should add in that kind of artifact knowledge level of speeding you up on your alts if you're a returning character that just doesn't exist for essences. Yeah, but I respect that we can disagree here, Tettles, although I think that your point of defense being that this is a better acquisition system than Legion Legendaries is not a strong argument, given that Legion Legendaries acquisition is really bad also. Like you're saying, it's better than a really, really bad thing.
I didn't say any of that. I think this one's better, and I think this is the point that they're moving forward is that they're going to have something like this that you're going to have to grind to be able to catch up, and you're going to have to phone it in 5 weeks in advance, and I think this is a better version of that.
Yeah, but okay, so Essence acquisition is better than 7.0 and 7.1 Legion Legendaries acquisition. It's worse than 7.2 Legion Legendaries. It's worse than 7.3 Legendaries. It's worse than 8.1 Azerite. It's worse than AP has been, except after 7.3, 7.1.
It's better than 7.2 Legendaries. It's
until they added the vendor. That's when it got better.
It was 7.3 Legendaries.
Okay.
It's better.
Either way, like it's not like this is progress that's being made here. Like this is an acquisition problem after like
they don't want you catching up.
Why not? Why can't we play the game? Why do they not want people to play the game?
It's current content. It's not, you're not catching up to current.
Why is me going back to Najatar and doing ally quests for 2 weeks current content? Why do I have to do that, Tettles?
I don't know. It's current content.
That's stupid. You're stupid. Let's move on.
All right. We had a good talk about that. Let's keep going.
Okay, so we have horrific visions. Horrific visions of Orgrimmar. Is the next thing. We talked about this a little bit, but I think that it's a good a good improvement of single player content, and we're excited about Torghast given the direction from Horrific Visions. So that's good.
I just want to say the character movement affixes are just awful. Leadenfoot and Scorched Feet feel really bad. Like I think the best thing about WoW, in my opinion, is like the combat and the movement feels fluid. Like when you press something, it does that thing and it feels good. Or like, that's generally, compared to other MMOs, I feel that those like lack in that regard. But WoW is very good at that. But then you have stuff like Leadfoot, Scorched Feet, or you start doing like, Blackwater Behemoth type stuff. It doesn't feel good. You're changing up a system that works and trying to go with something that doesn't. It's the reason they don't have vehicle gameplay in Raid anymore. Like, it didn't work. People didn't like it. It's not fun compared to the rest of the game. So why would they continue to do it?
Yeah. Leadenfoot.
Anything that does make you lose control of your character is very frustrating to me. I dislike that to an extreme.
I 100% agree. That shit's so bad. Leadenfoot and Scorched Earth are just the epitome of terrible.
Gift of the Titans, though. Megapog.
Gift of the Titans is really good, but
so fun. Yeah.
Gift of the Titans, whenever I have a 17 stack of Leadenfoot, is still, I can't move.
Right. We love Gift of the Titans, though. Okay.
Out of this hell.
I think we want to close our discussion, though, of BFA in a pretty important topic, class design. So we've covered elements of this overall. We can just kind of summarize, though, at the end here. Jason, let's start with you with tanks. So what do you think of how tanks have felt in BFA?
Well, in Legion, it felt you were like in charge of your own destiny. DKs took this to an extreme. We'll get to them in a second. But other tanks still felt like if you press the right buttons and you did your job well, then you were making yourself an easier healing target for your healer, and you were able to do more in a dungeon. In BFA, it never felt like that until like maybe this patch, but even then, that's just like damage procs from Twilight Devastation, which it does make you feel a little cooler, but it's not like, it doesn't fix the core problem of I want to be like somewhat responsible for my own life instead of just I press my active mitigation on cooldown and that's my entire tanking job. Is I'm basically just a damage sponge. I do slightly less damage than other people, and I take slightly less damage than other people. And that's my whole job as a tank. I feel like there should be more to it. DK was the complete extreme of being able to take your own life in your own hands. They didn't need a healer, and they brought a healing cooldown to the group every 45 seconds. A big one, like a good healing cooldown that you could just use to heal your group to full. And so that was the crazy thing. It was Blood Death Knight balance, and they were like, wow, we can't have tanks doing this. Let's nerf all of them so that none of them feel anything like that.
I know. Not to mention their control over mobs with Grip and Legion was insanely good.
Mm-hmm. It was like 5 extra yards on mass grips. It was like a 25-yard range or something on it. It was huge. And yeah, it does not feel good, this expansion. Like, it hasn't felt good the whole time. Raid tanking didn't feel any different to me.
Does Prot Warrior and Vengeance Demon Hunter this patch not feel that way at all? It doesn't feel like you're in control of your life at all?
I think it's definitely closer to it, right? Like, it's the
Demon
first time
Hunter,
in BFA where it feels close.
So Warrior still feels like other people are in charge of your health, but you at least are like, you can mitigate and play well. And Demon Hunter, you are actually like starting to get closer to that Blood DK level in Legion. So those feel better. And it's good that I think they're getting to that point again, because they're not Blood DK in Legion, but they are approaching, some relevancy where you can control your own destiny to an extent. But
Sure.
And Brewmaster, I guess last season felt a little more like that too, where your incoming healing was a lot stronger. I mean, I still wouldn't compare it to Legion, but it was closer. You were getting to the right area of where you wanted a tank to be. At least you were on the same map.
Yeah, I definitely agree that tanking is in a pretty rough state. But at the same point, healing was in an equally bad state at the very end of Legion, and I don't know if they fixed that in Mythic Plus. Really, is healing any better now?
None of us are Mythic Plus healers, so the feel side of things is not going to be something that we have a good answer on. But I feel like
healers are
you didn't
definitely
heal
more important.
anything. Yeah, true.
Like you can't do a 4 healer, even a KSM run. We're not doing not 4 healer, 4 DPS
healer.
runs because it's still just a lot of group damage on lower level keys. Healers are more important to BFA for sure.
I still think it all came down to Blood DK balance, right? It just became so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Consumption leech was insane, and the fact that BDKs didn't need any healing at all just meant that the healer was a DPS that could sometimes save people, and that doesn't feel good either. But if you took BDK out of the Legion meta towards the end, healers I think would have been fine. Like playing a Brewmaster, I was very reliant on a healer to do the pulls I wanted to do, but I still felt like I had some agency and like I could do a giant pull, and if I play well, then I'm not going to die as long as the healer is doing his job. Now it's like, dude, the healer. I could do my job perfectly well, and I'm just not going to survive it because I can no longer even approach the pulls that I wanted to do in Legion.
I think the best example is Shadow of Zul. I feel like I have almost no control over my life on that. It's like I do like 20% of the job needed for that mob, which is press my cooldowns in an order that'll match what my healer is doing and make sure I don't get one shot. That's it.
Yeah, and the rest is just on your healer spamming heals into you. Which, yeah, I don't know. I feel like tanks could use a little bit of a power buff on the tankiness side of things. Like, give them some more ability to, to play well and be more survivable because of it. Require a little bit less healing because of it.
They have only buttons that allows their health to not go down and no buttons that allows their health to actually go up. I think is a root of the problem, right?
Yeah, Vengeance and Blood have the buttons that let their health go up, and Brewmaster used to, but that got nerfed a lot. I think that it's good to make it so that you can't go without a healer. I think that that's good, but like I think you should need to have a healer. But I think that you should also be able to like play well as a tank and have that really be way tankier than somebody who's not pressing their buttons correctly.
A big part of that was also being able to swap gear in Legion. Some of the legendaries let you change your play style to match pulls where you could become the Uber tank as a monk, for instance, taking tons of physical damage and actually like matching it in your purifies and being able to heal a bit too. That if you knew what to do and how to change your gear around to match that, you felt very strong and your group felt stronger because of it. But it just doesn't exist. That gameplay is gone.
If you could change essences, would you feel better? Mid dungeon, if you could change essences, would that feel any better or no?
No, it doesn't really fill the same role as legendaries. Like it doesn't. What would I change on a monk? Like I guess I could run
Gifted the Dyke or whatever.
It would help. It would definitely help. It wouldn't solve the issue entirely. Just like putting gear swapping back in wouldn't solve the issue entirely. It also comes down to their class design. Like they went out of their way to be like, okay, tanks shouldn't be that strong anymore, and we felt it the whole expansion. So.
I don't know. I think I'm with you though. I think tanks should probably be that strong.
I mean, let alone it's pretty obvious that nobody wants to play tank. Like there's so few tanks in North America that anything to help tanks would be good at this point. Incentivize the people to play the role.
Oh, I think they did backtrack at least on the GCD thing.
Yeah, oh my god, dude.
So they backtracked a lot on the GCD thing. There's some classes like Guardian Druid and Protection Paladin that need to be absolutely cleansed of anything that's on the GCD. But those two are probably it. I think everything else is mostly okay.
Anybody remember Ignore Pain on the GCD? That was a good 8.0. That was a wild time, man. Who thought that was
Bubble is on the GCD. Let it be known that for some reason Bubble is on the GCD for Prop Pally, and you're like, what the fuck is that?
Is Light of the Protector still on the GCD?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It feels terrible. Like
correct.
That felt good 0% of the time. I don't understand why that has to be an ability on the GCD. Like what to show the animation of you putting your hand in the air? Like
that's my favorite thing is like so many of these GCD abilities just play like a emote. Like they just play like /point or /war or / raise your hand in the air or whatever. Like they had these abilities like Meta and Stormkeeper that like your character does something cool and that makes it make sense that it's on the GCD. And now most of the ones that they just put on the GCD are just so I don't know. You just feel like you're AFK. You're just waiting to be able to start doing your damage or healing. Anyways, we've covered I think everything here now. We've gotten through our topics. Is there anything that
Starfall?
Yeah, Starfall.
I didn't even put that on there. Let it be known I did not even add that into that.
I was thinking of titles and I was like,
help, my class is dog shit, bro.
It's definitely they need to buff Starfall or buff Dots. Although Dots, the reason they didn't like that is that they were the king of spread cleave for like 5 years or something, and it's like, okay, well, let's step back from that. But let's also nerf Starfall because why not?
It's bad, anyways. I've just accepted that the game is just not going to be suited for Moonkin this patch.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, it does feel like classes coming into expansions are just not complete.
Yes.
Like they have to add so many layers. It's like even the first like patch, Uldir, who felt complete there? Like who felt like this is a good class that I'm playing right now? I couldn't think of maybe Sub Rogue on Zul felt pretty good.
Bro, Sub Rogue it was it was literally 2 buttons though.
Yeah, this is the best 2 buttons you could ever press.
It was fun, but it was 2 buttons.
Okay. Something that they need to be very wary of moving into the next expansion is how classes are going to end up feeling once they end up stripping Azurite and Essences away. Mm-hmm. Like they have to 100% be cognizant of it and add in like buttons abilities. So I don't remember where I was whenever somebody said it. It may have even been on the show that honestly removal of the talent system could be beneficial too. Just like a complete removal of how the talents end up working and like a complete restructuring could also be advantageous in a different way. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to come to in conclusion wise, but they absolutely have to be wary of that moving into Shadowlands, how classes feel, because people were so fucking mad at the beginning of this expansion with how Shadow Priest and an Enhancement Shaman and like Jason said, Sub Rogue with their 2-button rotation were.
Yeah, I'm good.
Classes just didn't feel good to me going in. It gets hard to explain, but I felt like I lost so much, and then even just leveling at BFA, you felt weaker and weaker every level you got.
Yep, and I worry that it's going to feel the exact same moving into Shadowlands, and they have to be thinking about how it's going.
Dude, we're gonna get Covenant abilities though. We're gonna get powerful Covenant abilities.
Dude, the Covenant system better be cool. They say that you're not supposed to swap very often, but they've proved time and time again if they ever offer an option of utility on the same row as a row with damage, people are 100% always going to pick the damage. It happened with Pride As, it's happened with Leech Corruption and Avoidance right now. They can't be just unaware of the fact that you can't put utility in with damage. It has to be all of one or all of the other.
I'm gonna select
Kyrian. It'll be another reforging where it's like if you want to play specific content, you have to change your thing to another one.
They've said that you can't reforge. Like I don't know what to. Okay, anyway,
just do 2 characters then. We got 1 Mythic Plus character and then 1 Raid character, and then you got a PvP character and then a World Quest character, and it's all the same. It's all the same class because you have to.
Yeah, it's instead of 12 alts, 1 for each class, it's now going to be 48, 1 for each Covenant for each class. I'm getting started now on boosting those guys up, getting them ready.
However, Dratnus is going to have a hot tier list incoming on youtube.com/Dratnus, so stay tuned for that content and make sure that you like and subscribe.
Thanks, Settles. All right, with that, I think that we'll go ahead and cut out the Q&A segment for this show due to already being 2 hours into the show.
Let me say, a lot of the questions that came in on the show were put into the creation of the show. We had a lot of Q&A too. The show's been very long. A lot of the questions, though, did go into the main show in terms of what we ended up discussing. In addition to that, please take the census. I appreciate it. It's in our Discord. It's in a channel called Titanforge Census. It will also be in the description of the YouTube video for this. Thank you so much.
All right. Later, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.